You know the chronicles, the shit that if mama knew, the stress, the drama do, the text phenomenal, rapid fire, pecs through the abdominal. You bastard liars, me who's the honorable, bathed and clothed up, shaved and close cut.
Alright guys, Austrian Hispanic here. I just want to thank you guys. It is February 22nd, 2019, and I'm just going to have a small monologue for you guys on what Stephanie Kelton and Warren Mosler have put out there as the new or what's called modern monetary theory, or what I like to call modern madness theory. And essentially, what it is that debts don't matter because the government prints its own money, and it doesn't need to worry about deficits. It could just keep on spending, and it's actually a good thing because it is government deficit, government spending is surplus for individuals like me and you, because they produce the money, they create the money. And first of all, I just want to say that no, she is incorrect, or they are incorrect on this. The government does not print the money. Government does not create money. It is the Federal Reserve. Now, when you hear that name, the Federal Reserve, you think, oh, it's another government agency. And yes and no. The Federal Reserve was actually it's actually was charted in 1913. And essentially, it is a private company with member banks that have no government oversight. There is some window dressing there, but the truth is that the member banks, or the Federal Reserve, is only beholden to these member banks, and slowly they eroded the value of the dollar about 95% since 1913. Now, what does that mean? When you buy, let's say, something like a can of Coke, 1913 or around this time, the value of the dollar did not hold up. So every year it takes more and more money to purchase the same amount of goods. I think at the end of the day, we're going to have a massive amount of inflation, and it's going to happen all at once. So what Stephanie says is that, okay, so deficits don't matter. I want to say, what about Zimbabwe? Yeah, they have hyperinflation. The value of their currency collapsed. And now the difference between the U.S. Dollar and the Zimbabwe, whatever I forgot what it was already, but their currency is the fact that the dollar is the reserve currency for the world, and it is used a lot in in foreign exchange. It is used. I believe about 70% of all foreign exchange transactions are $0.50, and it's used to denominate oil and many other commodities. Many currencies are pegged to it, focusing on IMF's special drawing rights. It's very clear that at some point the dollar will be phased out as reserve currency, and that's when we'll see hyperinflation, or around this time. It might be consecutive. It might be, for her to say that the deficits don't matter, is just a fallacy. It's just a waiting game. So we look here on the Federal Reserve's website that 1913, that's when it was charted for 20 years. And in 1927, the McFadden Act essentially gave perpetuity to the Federal Reserve. So it's just on. It doesn't need to go to Congress every so often and ask to be renewed, to have a renewed charter. So Stephanie and Warren fed balance sheets with a fine-tooth comb, but didn't go actually into the charter itself. And so I'm just gonna show you guys right now. This is from the St. Louis Fed. This is the list of member banks in 1914. As of, it's been updated here and then, but this is the one that I have for now. And you can see clearly that there's a number of banks here that are part of the Fed system. So that's fallacy number one, that the Federal Reserve is a government agency, the power to print money when they don't. They have to go to the Fed. The government has to create securities that the Fed buys, which is called debt monetization. And we just saw a few days ago, Jerome Powell, the Fed chairman, just essentially acknowledged that they are going to monetize the debt. So we have the minutes that came out on Wednesday, the 20th, and that essentially was an admission by the Federal Reserve that they are monetizing $4 trillion balance sheet that is essentially was inflated from the emergence of the 2008 financial crisis. So they are doing a reversal of their reduction of the balance sheet, and not only that, but if interest rates. And that's going to be another topic that I'll go into down the road in another video, interest rates and significance of this. But the MMT crowd, they have their own opinions on interest rates. Personally, myself, I adhere to Austrian values according to folks like Mises, Buck Bauer, I don't know, I'm going to butcher his name all the time, Murray Rothbard. Even Milton Friedman has some good ideas, even though he's of the Chicago school. So Bloomberg reported in 2009 that the Fed could not account for $9 trillion of balance sheets transactions, and that was under Keynesian policy. So going back to the fact that there's no real accountability, there is no real auditing of the Fed. Individuals like Bernie and Alexandria Ocasio trying to pump up MMT. The reason why they want it is because it gives the government essentially a blank check, and it's gonna create inflation, and that's what they don't want to talk about. Another thing is that inflation, monetary inflation, is not when prices go up. It's actually the expansion of the monetary supply. So when the Federal Reserve creates these dollars out of thin air, and now it's just a log entry, what it is that there's more dollars chasing the same amount of goods. It's clear that modern monetary theory is something that we need to be worried about. It's something that is gaining momentum around the intellectual crowd, and it's very clear that people like Bernie and AOC, but it is a fallacy. It's going to create a problem down the road. What it is essentially the government knows better than the free market on how to allocate resources. You can print all the money you want. That does not matter. What matters is good. And for example, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a steak, or would you have $100? But you can't buy anything with those $100. It's just a piece of paper or a log entry. Whereas in the steak, you can eat it and you can consume it. So the fallacy is that can equate a real good with money, and if the money does not hold its purchasing power, investors or people that hold bonds, they lose confidence in that currency or in the dollar and future purchasing power. And that's what they don't want to address. They say that, oh, that's nonsense, that the dollar will always hold value because it is the reserve currency, and we see it being phased out. And I do see a strong new case for gold and silver, commodity currencies. It's been around for 4,000 years, and for me, in my opinion, gold is money, and that's it, as J.P. Morgan put it. So I just want to thank you guys. This is addressed directly to Stephanie Kelton. If she could get back to me on this and answer my questions, I would appreciate it. Signing out.
Young and gifted, my tongue's prolific. In the beach bungalow is how I bung in Christmas. With a street summer flow from the hungriest districts. Switch